So I'm going to take some measurements. This is about where the darkness of the trees from behind kind of settles, and then we can draw this faux horizon line because it's really not the horizon line, it's just where the hill kind of meets the shadows at the back. This is actually a photo I took. Beautiful forest scene. We were there for a birthday, and then I took a bunch of pictures, and this is one of the ones I liked. It's actually originally horizontal, but I made it vertical because it looks much better. And I actually like the vertical format for videos. It works better, I find. So this tree starts somewhere around here, and there will be a link in the description box if you want to see the reference photo. Hey Thomas, how are you doing? Sujanith says your manga drawings are great. Thank you. Working on it. It's really hard. Comic drawing is very inspiring, like we had Amar. Chitra Katha in India. Okay, I'm unfamiliar with them. I'm actually really unfamiliar with the comic industry, more with the manga, but I'll definitely take a look. I'll search him later. Him or her? I'm not sure. But let me know. I definitely want to learn more. And from different people, right? I want to make sure I have multiple influences. And because I feel like I've been practicing on my own quite a bit, and I can kind of let some information in now, in particular with comics and manga. So yeah, I hope you had a good week. I love Thursdays because it's the end of the week and there's the live stream, so it's like finishing the week off with a bang, really. So it's really nice, and I can take it easy. So yeah. And usually I treat Thursdays like, and some of you have seen my Instagram post on like, don't judge yourself if you did your best. Usually I treat Thursday very easily like a win, no matter really what I finished, because I have the live stream. So that's a really meaningful thing for me. It's one of the only schedule events that I actually schedule. You know, most of the things I just do, you know, editing videos, doing stuff like that. But this is scheduled, so just a good time. And thank you so much for being here. That's a great opportunity to thank you once again. So we have a road here. We have the trees. I'm just starting with what looks the most interesting, right? Now, if we look at the main shapes, and again, this is something that a lot of people have some trouble with, foliage. What I really am going to do is treat this entire thing here to the left, kind of like one big shape, all the way down to here. We have another tree behind this tree, and that's literally just one shape, right? All of this is one shape. There is this tree in the back here that I actually really like. I like that it goes in a different angle than these two, so just another kind of compositional means. I feel like I'll have to do some plein air soon because I'm getting too comfortable with pictures and using image references, and that's not good. That's not a good thing, and I hope to do some more plein air because it really is it leads to great improvement in skills from my experience. So just getting in a few branches here for the main trees. I'm going to add a few more on this side, even though they're not really there, and put more emphasis on that, just because I don't want to lead all the viewers outside of the frame. Is it mandatory to stretch paper before? I don't think so, but it really will depend on what you enjoy and how you enjoy painting. So if you enjoy, or if you don't mind rather, the paper buckling a lot and you kind of work around that, I find that it's perfectly okay. The one caveat I will say is if you're painting very large pieces, you may run into trouble. And I would love for you to have the freedom to at least tilt the paper to get the water to move down, as opposed to staying and pooling within those curved areas of the paper. That's the one I would say major risk you're running if you're not stretching your paper. And as you know, I rarely paint these sizes. I may do that in the future to challenge myself and to create something grander. I actually do have that desire sometimes. But I do think you can create something grand at small sizes. It will still look beautiful, right? Of course it will look beautiful, but it will also feel impactful, you know? It's more of a matter of how you paint, right? Now there is a pretty significant shadow here, so let me put that in. Not sure what causes it. And then we have this beautiful kind of composition of rocks here. We'll figure out the details as we move, right? But I just want to get a few of these down here. With these scenes, I feel much more comfortable drawing them real time and actually showing you, but with portraits and things that require careful measurement, and it's just a nightmare, so I'll very rarely draw. There's actually one portrait of me that you can see me drawing live. Not live, but in a video, if you're interested in that kind of a thing, and it's the Bard study that I did. It's not really a portrait, more of a statue, but still, I think it was a worthwhile process. I really like how this one's coming along. It's clear shapes, it looks really good, and I think I may work in slower glazes this time, because I do want to get a result that I'm proud of and a little more deliberate with, I think. We have this shadow crossing through here, another one crossing through there. So there's always this question of how I'm going to start the process. And you won't always know, which is why you do these experiments. And as I've shown you in the Aussie scene, not Aussie scene, but Aussie stream, you just kind of have to sometimes try to know. We're not going to try here, of course, just going for it. But that's, you just take that with the good and bad of it, right? So I'm gonna paint just a thin yellow wash, okay? And it's not gonna cover everything. I'm gonna again do this a little differently. We're gonna work from I guess light to dark in a way, because I'm gonna start setting up all of these tree branches and really painting the highlights in a way, something I don't often do. Again, there's always this risk of the painting looking a little fragmented. Actually, the tree part I can cover. Again, the risk of the painting looking a little fragmented. But because we're starting with such a thin glaze, maybe we'll be able to kind of circumvent that. We'll see. I just want to try out something a little different. And today's process is going to be really low pressure. I do want to work very patiently in a way. But it is going to be low pressure, patiently and slowly, right? Because usually I'll just, tackle it head on, top to bottom, overarching wash. But let's see what we can create here that'll be interesting. I don't have a really solid game plan right now. So we'll kind of examine the situation and see what we can make out of it. So a bunch of highlights on tree branches and stuff we may later decide to paint around. Okay, I know this is gonna make our sky wash an interesting part of the process, let's just say that. But yeah, and I'm actually thinking of continuing with this yellow over everything, pretty much, like the grass and everything. This was the original plan. I think that's what we're gonna do. And I started with my goat brush, and then I ended up with a Skoda somehow. Bit of that. A few of these branches here again. And I know you don't see much, but we're really just painting the highlights right now. Let's increase the yellowness here just a bit. And I don't want the colors to be pure. I'm actually really happy for them not to be pure. Now, as we get to this point, you see this shape of foliage just takes over, and all of it is kind of going to benefit from being a little yellow, maybe. So I'm going to do more of that. Now, what I think I'll do next is mix. Let's break away from the palette I just mentioned and try something new. So I'm going to add a bit of lemon yellow to my mix and a bit of phthalo blue. So let's try and go for a bit of a brighter green. And this, as someone commented and really helped me, this is a phthalo blue red shade. I actually need to try out the green shade, because that's going to help me out with mixing bright greens. Not that they're that important, bright greens, but maybe I would want to, sometimes. So yeah. And I'm going to kind of let this area blend together. And notice how I'm leaving all of those highlights for some of the rocks, right? That's going to be like preparation for later when we like to add shadows next to them, or something like that. Now let's add a bit of May green to see what it would look like together, because it's much easier to mix something strong with it. And I've been really fond of this green recently. So even though I painted the highlights, I am going to leave a few paper white highlights, as you can see here, on the rocks, because these really need to shine more than the tree branches, probably. At least some of them. But you have to be careful not to overdo it. Like, just leaving a few is enough. If you're going to leave too much, you may end up with not clear enough of a focal point. So that's going to be our first wash. A very strange one in a way. And let's actually strengthen that close to us. Let's switch to our phthalo mix, just to create an additional layer of depth with the values, right? It's all going to dry much lighter, and there will be more washes on top of it. Now, I'm going to start actually with the shadows on the trees. I'm going to try and figure out what color I want to mix for those. So it's kind of a dark bluish, cool color. And we'll see. I'll take it step by step. I know it's a very different process from my usual, but why not? So I think a bit of phthalo, a bit of quinacridone, a bit of everything really will do the trick here. A bit more yellow. And this is not going to be enough, of course. What I'm going to do is start painting and mix more as I will need more, right? Now, I'm painting this tree trunk here, and this is actually a fun way of doing this, of starting small with a relatively small detail so that you can focus a lot and really remove some of the pressure, because I'm just going to work on this tree trunk, right? And get some of those shapes in here that you can already kind of tell and recognize. Just move this wash along. I feel like it needs a bit more red, so I'm going to add just a bit of the quinacridone rose, and I think that's going to push it in the right direction. And you see I'm making sure to leave these highlights. They're not too big, actually. They're very small and almost insignificant, but they are important to tell the story. And if you focus hard enough and you really try and kind of match the shapes you see and the way it looks, it will end up looking quite nice and will connect in the end, right? But you have to really trust this will happen and kind of do your best to mix the right mixture and you know, things that involve both technical skills and also just the kind of mindset you have while painting. I am going to include some of these little branches, some of these branches here, working with the very tip of my Skoda brush. I think that looks good already. So let's see. Now maybe a bit more blue. Let's see what we got here. A bit more red. And I'm kind of using whatever I have on the palette, which is a great fun as well. It's a big part of what makes me enjoy it. Kind of mix in all different mixing areas and see what I can produce. So let's put in a few of these branches that I said I will include just a few of. Now try not to make them too parallel, so you know they should go in different directions ideally, just to keep it a little interesting. And here we get to this area which is lit. So I'm going to zoom in this case. And a couple of things. First, don't try and render every small thing you see. The way I usually do this is by focusing on the borders of the shape. So for example here, we have that border between the light and shadow. Make sure you get that texture of the tree trunk by emphasizing the edges of the shape, right? And a bit of the inside of it, but not too much. Like this. We have a bunch of dark shadows within the highlight. Made the trunk a little thicker, but that's fine. Now look at what happens here. Again, this line between the shadow and the highlight. You see this? There's this beautiful texture, and it's mostly prevalent in the transition. It's not like filling things in with a lot of lines and a lot of details. It's the transition that creates the texture. Okay? Now let's see. Does the color change? I'm going to add a bit more red and a bit more yellow to kind of maybe add a bit of orange to it, a hint. But again, it's this, the transition. That's where the texture happens, right? That's what creates the texture. And then as we move down, the shadow kind of takes over the entire tree, right? Like this. And we see some of those patterns on the trunk, like that. And that kind of makes up our tree. Now this tree leads to a cast shadow that we're going to use this opportunity to paint as well. Kind of casts to the right. I told you it's going to be an unconventional process. Really trying to break the mold here. What we can do is use this opportunity to connect this tree with the rocks. Some of the rocks here, there are shadows on them. So let's do that actually. And you see how that works? You don't have to worry about the entire painting all at once. In fact, it can be very discouraging and very tough to do. So if you can divide your work into different sections and focus on them and not worry about the rest. Of course, I could have merged this trunk with a shadow in the background. I could have done a lot of things, but why don't we not worry about that and instead worry about the thing that's within our control, which is a very set shape that we chose to focus on, and do the best we can with that. That's kind of my message here. And don't forget the cast shadows, right? The rocks also cast some shadows. And even if we're going to need to darken the grass, that's perfectly fine. We will. We will work around it. We're going to break the fear of working light on dark. Okay? That's what we're going to do today. So if you have this fear of putting in the grass after you put in these shadows, don't worry. We're going to fix it today. Hopefully. Of course, you have to be careful. This paper is probably not the best to do this, but I'm going to show you it's possible. Hopefully. Or we're going to mess it up and it's all good. So you see it already starts to take a bit of shape here. And when you work light to dark, it's a big benefit of this kind of a process, right? So we can actually do the same for this other tree. And hopefully it's interesting to see this because I know this is super like chill to work like in small sections like this. But don't worry, after we finish this tree, it's going to be much more obvious what we need to do with the rest. So we'll actually have a bit of an easier time. Like this background, I am going to put in one wash probably and stuff like that. So let me get this from the top. I'm going to squint my eyes and try and see the overall shape here. Because there are a lot of highlights crossing through and influencing the different shapes here. And this is what I mean by you really have to sometimes detach from what you see and just consult your intuition in a way. And there's like the eyes see, then the brain interprets, and then the brain does whatever it wants. Here, I'm kind of trying to not have the brain interpret, if that makes sense. I don't want it to interpret anything. I just want it to let me do my thing. Direct line of communication between my eyes and my hand. Okay? Something I talk about sometimes, but not a lot. So if you find that helpful, I think you'll find today's stream very useful in a way. But that direct line of communication is really important, I find. And then we have this tree branch coming up from around here, going down into whatever is there. Like that. I'll actually darken a bit. I feel like I'm starting to lose the value. It needs to be a little darker. I'm kind of freely, I guess, using the split primary palette, you know, both a warm and a cool version of every color. Here we get a bit more of shadows crossing around the tree trunk. And of course, these aren't flat. There's a variation of values within them, right? But I'm going to keep it simple for now, especially because I have this one that's fairly detailed. So this tree trunk, let's get just a bit of texture going here, just to hint at it. And near the bottom. And I'm going to do the same. So I'm going to connect it to a cast shadow. Like so. But this time I'm going to be a little more, I guess, courageous. And we're going to connect it to a bigger shadow behind this shadow here. Like so. It goes around here. This is a new shape, but you know what? Why not? No, let's wait with that. And then we have a couple of other shadows here at the back that we can connect this to already. A bit of a risky move, because then you have to figure out what was I doing. But it's going to work. I have a good feeling about this, so we'll see. So just a bit of those shadows in here. Let's actually do this side too. While we're here, there is another tree trunk. I drew it, actually, so you can see it. Let's connect with that too. Let's get those connections going. So this goes up, a little more simplified, right? And this is why sometimes I love to start from the focal point and move my way out, because then you're in a place where you have the most energy when you work on the most important thing, right? Before you get tired of the process and maybe you're getting a little unfocused, you can start with those things first. Now let's get this shape in as well. Now I'm going to add a bit of yellow, just a bit, and a bit of blue, because this shadow is literally on the grass. I want it to be a little bit greener. And patiently work on it. Again, you see, I don't have to paint each and every blade of grass at all, not even close. What I need to do is get the overall shape in. So there's this, and you see there's this tree trunk here. And again, if you just let go of what you think is there and kind of just see things in a more abstract light, you'll do really well here. And then you see you have a bunch of rocks here with a bunch of highlights in between them. So I'm going to set that up like this. Just a shape. Behind it, there's another group of rocks, actually. So I can do this. This entire thing is a shadow, but we don't have to be in a hurry, okay? We can start step by step. Always think about what's the next step I want to take care of, okay? Which is actually that. I think we can move on to that. So let me try this. And then I promise I'll take a break and address some of the chat messages, because we did a lot here. Now this is really black. This gets much, much darker. It's a kind of a bluish green. So let's push it to be dark, but not quite black. And I'm going to use my test paper here for the first time. That actually makes a lot of sense. We got the right color, I think. And we'll just put in this entire mass of trees in one go, okay? And you really want to pay close attention here, maybe. One go. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to work around highlights. See? I'm going to work around this tree trunk. And I'm going to work around this random highlight I recognize in the distance. And around those rocks, right? And this is connected. And there's another tree here, so let's work around that. And get all the way to the grass here, right around here. And then get that other side of the tree, right? And I have changed quite a bit here because I simplified, but the general gist of it still, I think, works really well. And look at how it starts to take shape, right? And if you have enough patience, it will work out. This isn't as dark, actually. This starts to be a lighter value. And then here, I'm going to keep it like this. There's a bit of it on the other side, but this is a little more complex. Let's get a few highlights in there using the side of the brush, like so. And get it to be a little darker around here. And now I have to be a little careful, again, around that tree trunk we put earlier. I love to sometimes, vary my approach like this. I don't do this nearly as often as I should be doing it. There's so much benefit in that. I'm going to add a bit more green and then water. Some parts of this are lighter and I would like to paint them connected. But I don't do this nearly enough when I just allow myself to paint a little differently. Using a bit of a different process and really letting it kind of dictate, what I do. This goes here. This is where, again, that dark shape we put earlier, that's when you have to pay attention, right, and figure out where it is. But once you do, you just put it in and switch to a bit of a darker value for these shadows on the tree. I'm going to show you. And then we'll take a much-deserved break because this was one heck of a wash. So I'm going to do this. This here is much darker. Get some variety in the branches. Don't have them, all parallel and boring and identical, because nature is not like that, right? Nature has very natural variety and transitions, and it's just much more interesting than just a bunch of repetitive shapes. And a bit of that nice kind of a lighter green maybe around the rocks. Put some shadows on the rocks to show that these are rocks. You see this kind of a thing here. Whether they read well or not, that's just, we're gonna do our best. And if they don't, they don't. This should be dark, like that. And this actually connects to this shape, so we're good. There's another rock here behind. But let's stop. What happens if I add a bit of that white opaque paint? Even though I don't want to go that route necessarily, let's add a touch of phthalo, just to give it some more saturation. Yeah, that's more like it. Actually, that looks good. So we'll do a bit of both. We'll get the bulk of it from the manganese blue hue and a bit of it from the phthalo blue. And we can get started. In worst case, if it doesn't look right, we'll darken or lighten or whatever is necessary. So, good. I think that will work. I don't know if it's the most accurate, but I actually feel like it looks good. So I'm going to go with that. Now I'm going to be careful because I do want to paint around some of the highlights I established earlier. And I know a lot of people are scared to paint light over dark. My advice to you would be, don't be. It's going to work out. A few of these highlights I'm just going to paint around. It's funny how a few of these highlights I haven't even painted branches to justify, but that's fine, like shadows. And this is really, again, it's an accumulation. The painting is going to be an accumulation of everything you did. So the more you get right, the more accurate or more to your vision it's going to look. But even if you got a lot wrong, it's still not ruined. It's just going to be a little farther off from that ultimate vision, but still definitely not going to be ruined. Let's add a bit of some other colors here to neutralize this a bit. So I'm working my way around the yellow highlights I established in the previous stage. As you can see here, I'm doing my best at least. It's not that easy. I'm actually missing quite a lot of them because I'm trying to work fast. That's fine. We'll see what it looks like once we're done with this wash. It's important for me to keep this fairly light still because I don't want to lose the eyes of the painting in a way. Many people call that the sky that. I want to make sure that they feel like sky, Good. I think that looks good. And we'll continue here down to the grass and the other side as well. So here I did put a bit of, the yellow. As long as I kind of leave a few highlights here and there, I'm good. There we go. So I think that's a nice wash that kind of establishes the sky. Well, let's see what we got here. This is actually nice and it will work. So I'm going to lighten it up ever so slightly with a bit more water and we'll get going starting from left to right, or maybe let's start right to left. I'm going to work here. So there are a bit of highlights within the green, but for the most part, this is just one green shape. I'm actually darkening some areas of the grass to make the highlights pop a little more, as they should, because the grass is a little darker. Greens are very misleading, and remember that. Whether you want to paint them as they are or exaggerate them, greens can be very misleading. And one of the best things you can do is turn a photo black and white and get a clearer view of what a green is actually like in terms of value. Sometimes you'll find they're much darker than you think. Now in this example, they're not super dark, and I will keep them fairly light and nice. I think Ruth is having a dream. She's barking. Can you hear her? Listen. She stopped now, of course. So she'll dream of, whatever. Chasing a cat, or, I don't know, anything else the dogs dream of, and then she'll go and make these sounds that are so adorable. Oh man, this is so funny. It's my favorite sound probably that she does. So I'm gonna do this, paint around the highlights once again, and you see how I'm lightening it up here and pushing the yellow a little more, because I want to have this center area a little. I still want it to be quite light, right? But we still need it to be darker than it is to make the highlights fall in the right place in a way. Bit of yellow again here, and as we move down, I'm gonna reintroduce some of that beautiful phthalo blue and a bit of yellow and red just to darken it up. May seem a little strong, but that's actually gonna work out really nicely. I just want that feeling of leading us into the well-lit area or whatever it is, right? Now I'm going to tilt it a bit like this because I don't want these to mix too much. So let's let it kind of chill out like that. And what you'll find is that I think, successfully darkened it so that it actually makes a lot of sense, right? Now I do want to address that back area that I still haven't gotten to, which should be a little lighter than this, but not as light as that. So somewhere in the middle. And let's do this. I'm gonna open up the reference photo again here. And I'm gonna leave a few highlights for the rocks and details and stuff that I do see in here, right? There are actually quite a lot of rocks here. But the one thing you can do, of course, remember, you can use opaque paint later on to add these in. It's not a big problem if you miss them, it's okay. Good. And maybe a bit of it here between the rocks. And we'll let this dry. We're good. So this next stage is seemingly, I think, a little easier. I think. Because we're really dealing with big abstract shapes. So I'm gonna do my best and we'll see how it goes. It's not too dark. It's fairly muted. It's a muted green, so let's do a big mix here of some phthalo blue, lemon yellow, and a bit of quinacridone rose, and you just add more and more until you like the balance. So to me, I think that gets close to the color I'm seeing for those trees up top. So now more water to make it a little watery. We'll just get started and see what happens. So I'm going to treat this as, again, one big shape. All of these groups of the tree are going to be one big shape, because I know a lot of people have serious issues with this and they try and paint each and every tree branch. My answer to that is don't. You don't need to. Let me show you. And hopefully it'll turn out nicely. So this is one. This is another one. And then you connect between them. This moves down here. Maybe you want to increase the yellowness of it. Feels like it should be a little more yellow. And sometimes a little brighter. So that's something I'll have to figure out later on if I need to lighten some things up. But as a general rule, I'm treating this as just swipes of the brush. And the more minimal you can be with these, the better. I am going to cover up the highlights that are unnecessary from before. But I'm pretty much going to stick to the shape of trees that I see, right? Now I added quite a lot of green here, quite a lot of red here to neutralize a lot of this, which I find is important, right? Because that keeps this area the most saturated and the most, prominent in that regard. Now here we're starting to connect to that tree to the side. So I'm just going to paint that in around that highlight from before that I lost, by the way. Painted over that, but I remember it was there, this highlight. And we need to mix more of this. Let's make this bottom section a little more saturated and see how that works. A little more of a clean green. Now adding just a touch of red. So this goes here, and this actually connects all the way down, but we need to paint around those highlights from before, if you remember. Like that, you see these lovely looking trees. There is area with sky here, so we're gonna leave that like skied out. And we're gonna paint around those highlights from earlier, right? And I lost some of the flow, but that's fine, because even though it's one shape, it's still fragmented, which is okay in this example to lose some of the flow here. Now, what's interesting is what's gonna happen once we get to this tree where it's just darker. And that's something we need to take into account. Hopefully that looks good. Also, there are some dark spots. Let me see if I can get them in now while it's still a little wet at least. That here I kind of lost the wetness, but I'm going to do it anyway. That just a few shadows here and there. But as we get to this tree, what's going to happen is the shadows are going to be darker and even bluer, I think. So you'll get kind of this sort of effect of layering and closer to us than this, right? Now this may not be strong enough, so let me add more, again, of the blue, yellow, and a bit of red to top it off, to neutralize. And here we're gonna have a bunch of these. Now, you gotta find a balance, right? If you go too strongly here, you may take up too much attention from the painting onto this section. So I'm kind of keeping it loose. One trick is to just come back with some water and soften it a bit, like this. See? And as long as the great kind of the overall shape of the sky works, you're good. Now let's add, I'm going to mix a bit of my phthalo with red because I need to darken some areas here. You don't go too literal, I think, but if you feel like putting a few twigs or a few, branches here and there, you're perfectly allowed to do so, of course. You're allowed to do whatever you want. It's your painting, right? So if I see some of these that kind of call for me, I will put a few of them in. And by the way, yes, this right side of the tree trunk is a little darker. We may darken it in just a few seconds. I'll think about it. I think we can do that. But that's exactly the thing. First, set up the main key shapes, and then you can start worrying about these smaller details, right? This, I told you from before, needs some darkening, but I'm going to make it a little cleaner of a green and then darken that. And hopefully what we managed to create here, and of course we're not done, but what we managed to create here is a clear enough of an impression while still keeping it loose and kind of looking at the shapes and everything, and hopefully it communicates that, right? So I think we can actually start working on the darker branches. So let's see what we got here. So when I look at this, I see especially for this section that this needs to be darker, but I don't want it to turn black. And what I think I'll mix is kind of a dark blue, and we'll see how that goes. The reason I can do it now is because this is dry. This has been dry for a long time now. It's from that second stage or something very early on. And I'm just going to darken it top to bottom. Now we can give it more of its full attention it deserves. So let's see what we get here. And if we need to darken it more, we can always darken it more with another stage. But I think what this will do is help things fall even more in their place. And let's see, we'll examine the before and after and see. But I do think this area, especially the right side of the tree trunk, should be darker. See how it makes it pop forward almost? Good. Now here's the thing. Now I'm going to do some wet and wet. So a bit of my blue, a bit of my red, mix something a little stronger here. Even a bit of neutral tint, I think, just to give it that final push to be darker. And we're going to do some wet and wet here. See? That's really going to get it to be as dark as it needs to on that right side. Then we can continue with that. And I think around the bottom is where I'll start tapering off that darkness and kind of just going a little lighter, I think. Because it doesn't need to be super duper dark. Or maybe it does, I'm not sure. Like that. There's actually a lot of the tree's texture showing here. Like this. Now, hopefully what this does is just it gives this tree trunk a little more attention. Let's straighten this line out here. And actually, let's make this thicker because I kind of messed up the shape in a way. Like this. Let's justify a few of these shadowless branches. Like that. Yeah, we're good. And here we can just move on and do this kind of same thing, really, with some of the tree trunks that are behind. So let me show you what I mean by that. See, there is another tree trunk here we put in earlier. And maybe a few stray branches that are visible. And then we have another one here going like that. And a few others, actually. Now, it is, you can decide to show more of these, fewer of these, follow whatever you kind of see. You can add more details and it will look beautiful. I believe in overwork to a limited extent. I think overwork in a way is also stylistic choice. So maybe you're not overworking, you just really like to do detailed work. A bit of a funny way of looking at it, I guess, but I really believe that. Here, same thing. Let's strengthen some of these. And we can always add some highlights later on, with opaque paint. Like if we want to add some highlights we haven't earlier to these branches, we could have done just that from the beginning without putting any highlights originally. Now here it's going to have to get a little darker. So let me see what I can do here. On the right side especially. Near some of these branches. This is a beautiful, beautiful branch. Here I need a highlight that I kind of lost, for example. And now it's just a matter of really you add very carefully until it feels right. This needs a shadow. The highlight is way too thick. This also needs to be in the shadow, I think. So now we're actually at a stage of the painting where it's just about, making improvements. To me, the main shapes are in, most of the details are in. One thing I think I'll do is, as I mentioned, I'm going to add a layer of just clean May green to make this brighter. I'll also fix this little shape right around here. Should go a little lower. But really, in terms of major shapes, we're done. This is as close as it'll get, right? Something like that. It's just a matter of adding small details, adding a few highlights maybe if you're interested in that, and we'll be good. And if you just take a look from afar, you see the shapes, everything is there really. Everything is there. All it is about now is, making those smaller changes and modifications to make it look better. By the way, I completely lost the shape of that line. It shouldn't, I did a huge hill here where it should be more of a straight, it should probably go like this. Maybe I'll fix that too. I don't like the way it looks. Let me fix it now. Now I'm looking at it and I cannot unsee it. We're getting to the stage where Liron gets cranky and wants to fix mistakes immediately, but that's fine. And talk about himself in third person. So this, I would very much like to get rid of. This little hill. This is okay to highlight. And then this goes much better. Just didn't like that awkward hill that I had there. Like this, now it's much better. Even let's do a dip here and then come back up. Good. It's funny, it's a big shape and I kind of messed up the way it looked, but that's fine. You can always correct. So when I look at the contrast between the grass and the highlights, still could, again, use some more of it. So, which is why I'm going to do this sap green stage. Let me get a bit of paper here and just do the thing I never do. Clean the palette. Because this time I really need just clean May green. Okay, it's going to be a thin wash, and this paint, no matter how much you take out, it's not going to be too dark. That's fine. It's a pretty light paint, which is good for us, for our purposes. Now, do I want to cover everything with it? I think, let's start here and see. But this is a very easy wash, to be honest with you, because I'm just going over, existing areas. I already know what I want to paint. It's just a matter of doing, and this is great practice. This is how I always say, practice doing even washes, right? That's a big part of it. Now notice how I'm not painting over the shadows. There's a very particular reason for that. This paint is a little opaque. And I don't want it to go over darker areas because it's going to show. So I'm trying to paint around those. Right, now it may be too dark. I actually think it's okay. We'll see. Now let's leave this road light. You see there's a road here, and then this goes like that. So we're going to leave this section a little lighter for the most part. And we'll just continue moving this down. And I don't think it's too dark. I think it looks good. Let's give it a spray, just for fun. And we'll see. Beautiful color. I really like it. Add more water, make it a little watery. Let's paint around these logs here, or whatever I consider adding later on. So like that. And we'll really start picking up the pace soon and getting this painting done, I think it's time. I think it's high time. I don't want to add more detail, like for example here. Maybe improvements, but not more details. So you see now the grass is much brighter. Now some people don't like this paint again because it's a little opaque, but I actually think it looks really neat. And I'm gonna do the same here, just a bit, have it even out. And maybe I can add just a bit of water here, a bit of a risky move, but I want to lighten it up in some spots. So we're gonna add a bit of water to hint that this road continues into here. It's going to be more important once it dries, so you're not going to see a huge effect now, but because there's more water, it's going to make sense later on. Let's blend this. Manual blending, as you can see. Looks a lot better. Let's add a bit of strong paint just around here, the bottom of the tree, like that. Good. Very, very good. I'm still learning, how to use the more opaque kinds of paints more effectively and more correctly, I guess. So it's still something in the making for me. I'm just thinking whether I want to put this shadow in kind of while it's still wet and it's going to blend a bit. I think I will. Let's try. It's starting to dry enough so that it won't spread out too much. See this shadow here? And that's a good little way of keeping it soft, I'm gonna add a bit of neutral tint to it to make it thicker. See? That looks really, really nice. A few more details there. This starts to dry, so I don't want to add too much. But there's this shadow under the logs or around them. And then there's this cast shadow here that I think this is dry. So let's actually, we won't put it here. This, I don't want that here. But I do want to put in a few more of these little grass blade details, here and there. I'm fine with actually putting the individual blades because the paper is still wet enough for them to spread out a little, make sense. Let's add a bit of orange here. I'm gonna make this a little orange. And let's try to get some details here. You know what, let's do this. Some abstract details around this little shrub or whatever that is. I may regret it, I may not. Let's put it in there. Because I do want these pieces of wood to show. And for them to show, I have to do this. So you need to find solutions to problems. That's the basic thing sometimes. So something you weren't planning on doing may reveal itself to be important to do. So we'll let this dry for a few more seconds, and then I can just come back with some opaque paint here and bring back those highlights. I'm gonna clean the brush, dry it a bit. Oh, Brit Brett finally made it to a live stream. Thank you for being here. I remembered you were in a live stream recently, right? So it's not like you never make it. So thank you so much. And we're just gonna paint that log. Bring back that log. So let's see here. But you just need a lot of paint to do this. So. And super thick paint, right? And this isn't acrylics, after all, it is still watercolor. And then there's just a bunch of details here that I do want to add, of course. There are some highlights within that little shrubbery that I'll put in right now. There are actually a few flowers that we can put in just for fun while we're at it. Like this. Just a few details. I think that makes sense. There's this twig here. So we'll add it, and then we can add a bit of shadow. Don't worry, we'll add some shadows around these two to make some of the highlights a little more real. Now, is there anything else I'd like to add while I have this paint here? Do I want to add a few more rocks or a few more highlights here and there? Because I do see a few of them here, you know? Just a few. I don't want to be tempted to put in too much. Here I kind of missed that highlight, so that's important actually. This rock here, there's a reason why this highlight goes, why the shadow goes up, because it's obscured behind a rock. That is something I want to put in. And of course I'll have to add the shadow to the rock. So look, we're gonna work from both ends, right? From the highlight side and then from the shadow side. See? And then bam, we have another rock here. Just a fun little process. But these are all final touches, right? The painting was nearly done the moment we put in the major shapes in, right? So I think that looks really, really nice. And we can start adding the shadows to the bottom section as well. I would like them to be a little warmer, so maybe even add a bit of Perylene red just to make it even redder or more orange. A little bit of a shadow under that twig and a few sub-twigs coming out of it. But this is where like it's so off to the side. I'm allowing myself some freedom in you know, looseness. We've been pretty slow and careful there, so here we can kind of go a little wild. Don't go too much, because that also is a risk, but like just a bit is fine. And yeah, I think I really like the way it turned out. I wonder if I should now. I shouldn't probably do it, but I'm like, I want to add a bit of a red tint to here and kind of smoothen the transition into light. Let's do this. Okay, I'm gonna take a risk here. I don't care. Let's do this. I wasn't planning on doing anything else, but now I feel like it's gonna be a good idea. So I'm gonna grab a bit of the red here, but it's quite neutralized from being mixed with a bunch of other stuff. Let's do a test run here. So what I want to do is use this mid value here, like that, and then kind of blend it into the lighter section. See, kind of like this. It just feels more natural, you know? That's good, that works, I'll do that. In some of the shadowy areas and in the transition, see? Then just come back and blend it right into the yellow. See, I think that looks much better actually. That's funny. That looks a little more natural to me, you know? Does it mean I should do this for the farther ones too? Possibly. Let's see here. Yep, that looks good. Kind of went a little strong there on the highlights. Yeah, Yeah, that looks much better. That really put it in. It's funny how small differences like that near the end can actually be significant. What highlight product you're using? Oh, okay, sorry, again. So I like to use this specific color. It's a Jaune Brilliant, Jaune, Brilliant, like brilliant in English, by PWCC. PWCC is an auction house. Shinhan PWC. Shinhan has 3 lines of paint, but the professional one is the premium, the PWC. That's the only one I recommend using. And this paint in particular, it's watercolor, and it's opaque, and it's pretty light fast, and it's just great for these. Use it straight out of the tube, and it creates beautiful, and I can actually help these smoothen out. And it creates beautiful, beautiful, opaque, kind of warm highlights. That's the thing I love about it. It's warm, and I love warmth in my work. Now, another solution I use often is this white gel pen. It's a simple Signo or Signo, Signo, white gel pen by Uniball. That does the trick. I actually plan on signing with this, so you can see it in action now. If the paper is dry enough. That also works really well as a tool for adding lights over darks. By the way, one more thing, I can see we can darken real fast. We don't have to, but we can. Why not? Again, I told you, if I look at it tomorrow, I may see, oh, I need to improve this and that, but just to show you real quick, before we remove the tape, the cast shadow is darker than some of the rocks. So darkening it will help the rocks look a little more believable. So here, the shadow is a little darker. So what happens is, everything that's the shadow on the ground is dark while the rocks stay light. That actually adds to them a lot. So I just wanted to put a bit of it here. And of course there is a bit of darker shadows in between some of the rocks. But generally speaking, just to make a bit of a better distinction between them. So all sorts of small touches like that, you can endlessly look and see, oh, this should be darker, this should be darker, you know. But yeah, let me switch over to my face and show it to you fully. Once again, I really hope you enjoyed this one. I want to thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here, allowing me to do what I do. Really, it means a lot to me. And I always say that's how I pay my bills, and that's how we feed Ruth, who's sleeping there in the corner. That's how we do it. So thank you so much for that, Ruth. Thanks you. Thank you so much. We'll talk again real soon.